The most dangerous persuasion rarely sounds aggressive. It sounds reasonable. It sounds like relief. And that is exactly why it gets past your guard. The dark side of persuasion does not begin with force. It begins with timing. It begins with pressure wrapped in politeness. You left a conversation agreeing to something you never meant to give. Your time, your money, your silence, or another chance. Here's what's really happening. Persuasion turns dark when someone stops helping you decide and starts quietly steering the state of mind you decide from. They do not need to overpower your logic if they can narrow your attention, speed up your emotions, and make resistance feel uncomfortable. They make the wrong choice feel easier, faster, kinder, or more socially acceptable than the choice you actually wanted. So, here's how you take your power back. When pressure rises, do not study their words first. Study what is happening to your pace, your clarity, and your ability to say no. It is about changing the conditions around your judgment until your own boundaries start sounding unreasonable to you. The first sign is not charm, it is compression. Your options get framed as smaller than they really are. Your time feels shorter, and your hesitation gets treated like a flaw. A healthy conversation gives you room to think. A manipulative one makes thinking feel expensive. That is why urgency is such a reliable weapon. If someone can make you afraid of missing the moment, they can make you ignore the pattern. You see this in sales calls, dating, workplaces, family pressure, and even casual texts that arrive loaded with false immediacy. Need an answer now is often less about necessity and more about control. The defense is simple and powerful because it looks unimpressive. Slow the tempo. A clean pause breaks more manipulation than a clever comeback ever will. If a decision is valid now, it can usually survive a measured delay, a written review, or one night's sleep. And if it cannot survive that, the pressure was probably the product. Your brain does not process urgency as a neutral detail. It treats it like a threat signal, and threat signals pull energy away from reflection and toward fast resolution. That is why you feel a sudden urge to fix the discomfort instead of evaluating the request. The manipulator is not always selling the thing. Sometimes they are selling relief from the tension they just created. A manager hints that loyalty means staying late again, and suddenly the issue is not workload anymore. It becomes your identity. That is the second dark move. They attach compliance to the kind of person you believe yourself to be. Good partner, supportive friend, team player, mature adult. Once the request is fused with identity, saying no starts to feel like betraying your own self-image instead of protecting your limits. This is why smart, kind, conscientious people often get pushed further than anyone else. Their values are real, and the manipulator learns how to stand behind them and speak through them. Listen carefully when a request comes with moral perfume. If the message quietly translates to, "Good people would do this," stop and inspect the frame. A healthy request respects your values. A dark one rents them. Separate who you are from what they want. You can be generous and still decline. You can be loving and still ask questions. You can be loyal and still refuse a bad deal. That separation matters more than it seems. Because once identity is hijacked, persuasion stops feeling external and starts sounding like your own conscience. There is another tell most people miss. Dark persuasion often arrives with borrowed certainty. The person sounds absolutely sure, so your nervous system starts treating confidence as evidence. But confidence is a performance cue, not proof. A practiced voice, a quick answer, or a dismissive laugh can make weak claims feel structurally stronger than they are. You see it when a date says you're overthinking, a coworker claims everyone agreed, or family treats you as the obstacle. Certainty is being used to make your hesitation look irrational. That is social pressure wearing the mask of truth. Who is everyone? What exactly was agreed? What happens if we wait? And what are the written terms? Specific questions puncture inflated certainty because reality is always more detailed than performance. Watch how people react when you request detail. A sincere persuader gets clearer, while a manipulative one gets irritated, vague, or suddenly personal. That reaction tells you the goal was never shared understanding, but smooth submission. Here is a quick everyday example. Someone apologizes, but the apology arrives with a push for instant forgiveness, closure, and a reset on their timeline. Now persuasion hides inside emotion. You are no longer responding to harm. You are being rushed to end the discomfort their apology created inside the room. That is why some apologies feel strangely heavy. They are not designed to restore trust. They are designed to recover access, and access is the currency behind much darker persuasion. Access to your attention, labor, body, and resources. Access to the version of you that stops making things difficult for them. Once you see that, a lot of confusing behavior becomes cleaner. You realize some people are not trying to be understood. They are trying to keep the gate open. Here is how you defend against that move. Do not reward emotional display with automatic restoration. Let apology and access become two separate conversations. That one distinction protects people from repeated cycles they keep mistaking for repair. Some persuasion does not push you forward. It fogs you through overload. Too many details, too many claims, too many emotional angles, too many side stories that force your mind to chase loose threads instead of tracking the main issue. When your attention fragments, your standards drop. That is why chaotic conversations often end with you agreeing just to end them. You are not persuaded by the logic. You are exhausted by the volume. So here's how you take your power back. Reduce the conversation to one sentence. What are you asking for exactly? That question is small, but it is brutal to manipulation. It pulls the fog into a single beam, and once the ask is visible, you can judge it cleanly. If the conversation keeps resisting clarity, the confusion is serving someone. There's also a softer tactic that catches people who pride themselves on empathy. Emotional mirroring is when they study your pain, then reflect it back with perfect tone, wording, and timing. For a moment, you feel deeply seen. And being seen creates trust faster than being convinced. But watch the pivot that follows. After resonance comes the request. Maybe it is money, secrecy, commitment before evidence, or another chance without accountability. Real empathy can exist inside persuasion, of course. The warning sign is not warmth. It is warmth that arrives strategically, then quickly cashes itself out. A good rule is this: trust pacing, not intensity. Genuine people do not need emotional closeness to mature at high speed, just because the moment feels charged. Manipulative persuasion often tries to make depth happen on demand. That is not intimacy. That is acceleration. If you've caught yourself missing this before, you're not alone. Tell me below, because most people were taught to watch for obvious aggression, not elegant pressure. And elegant pressure is exactly what gets through. Here is a sharper reframe. The darkest persuasion is not about making you believe something false. It is about making you abandon the conditions that help you detect what is false. Your timeline, your questions, your neutral perspective, and your right to disappoint someone. Once those go quiet, even intelligent people become easy to steer. A text arrives late at night, loaded with urgency, guilt, and a request only you can supposedly solve. That is not just a message. It is an environment. Environments persuade, which is why your defense cannot live in words alone. It has to live in structure. Move important decisions into daylight. Put money matters in writing. Discuss emotional asks after sleep, not during adrenaline. And when stakes are high, bring in a neutral third mind before you commit. It sounds simple because simple is what works under pressure. Dark persuasion loves speed, privacy, and ambiguity. So build slowness, visibility, and clarity into your default responses. There's one more lever that traps people for years. Intermittent reward means the person is kind just often enough to keep your hope alive. Respectful just often enough to reset your doubt. Affectionate just often enough to make you question the pattern. That inconsistency creates a brutal kind of persuasion. Because now you are not chasing a person, you are chasing the return of a state. The good, early version that made all your sacrifices feel like they might finally pay off. This is why people stay far beyond their own evidence. They confuse unpredictability with depth, and relief with love, and brief improvement with real change. Watch for this in any relationship built on emotional whiplash. If your peace depends on guessing which version of them will appear, persuasion is already happening through uncertainty. The defense is not to decode them better. It is to trust the pattern over the promise. Patterns tell the truth that moments try to edit. Another hidden mechanism is the false choice. You are given two options. both shaped to benefit the other person, while better options are quietly erased. Either you help me tonight or you do not care. Either we move forward now or you are afraid. Either you trust me or this is over. These are not real choices. They are emotional corridors. They lead you where someone wants you to go while making you feel responsible for the path. A fast defense is to expand the frame aloud. I do care, and my answer is still no. I can take this seriously without deciding tonight. Trust is not the same as instant access. That is how you reopen the exits, and when exits reopen, manipulation weakens. Most people never hear this. Politeness can become a weapon against your boundaries. Not because politeness is bad, because you may have been trained to protect other people's comfort faster than you protect your own clarity. That training makes dark persuasion easier. The manipulator does not need to defeat you. They just need to make you feel rude. Once saying no feels socially ugly, you start paying for harmony with your own peace. Practice neutral refusal. No long defense, no courtroom speech, no desperate smile. A calm "that doesn't work for me" can feel almost too small. That is why it is effective. It does not offer extra handles. People who depend on your over-explaining often dislike short clarity because short clarity leaves them less to work with. Watch what happens after a simple boundary. The response is often the real reveal. Respect sounds like adjustment. Manipulation sounds like guilt, escalation, ridicule, or wounded innocence. That is useful information, so do not rush to explain it away. Here is another everyday scene. Someone keeps changing the topic whenever you ask for accountability, then returns with affection, nostalgia, or crisis. That is not random. It is attention theft. The aim is to keep you emotionally active while keeping the real issue unresolved. If the core problem never stays on the table for more than a minute, persuasion is happening through misdirection. Bring the conversation back with one clean line. We can talk about that after we finish this. Simple language protects focus, judgment, and freedom. And freedom is the real stake in every dark persuasion dynamic. Not just whether you say yes or no today, but whether you remain able to decide from your own center tomorrow. That is why even small manipulations matter. They train you to doubt your signals, negotiate against yourself, and mistake discomfort for proof your boundary is wrong. So here is the defensive insight to keep. Discomfort is not always danger. Sometimes discomfort is just the sound of a pattern losing control over you. The first time you slow a pressured decision, ask for writing, or refuse a false choice, it may feel awkward. Awkward is fine and still cheaper than regret, or being shaped into someone easier to use. And once you stop worshiping immediate harmony, your perception gets sharper very quickly. You start hearing what is hidden under the words. The rush, the guilt, the identity bait, the fog, the borrowed certainty, the disappearing accountability, the access grab. That is when the whole game changes. Because dark persuasion works best on unnamed patterns. Name the pattern and its power drops. Not always instantly, but significantly. A sentence like, "this feels rushed," or "you're turning this into a character judgment" can reset an entire interaction. You do not need a dramatic speech. You need accurate language, because accurate language is a boundary with a spine. So keep a few phrases ready before you need them. "I want time to think." Put it in writing. That's a different issue. "No, not today. I am not discussing this while emotions are high." Those lines are not cold. Use them before you think you sound impressive enough, because confidence under pressure is often borrowed from preparation, not personality. The goal is not to become unpursuable. Wise people stay open to influence, evidence, and genuine connection. The goal is to become harder to steer through distortion. You want persuasion to meet your clarity, not bypass it. You want connection without surrender. You want compassion without self-erasure. You want to remain kind without becoming available for capture. That balance is a skill. The more you practice noticing pace, pressure, framing, and access, the less personal confusion runs your choices. You stop asking, "Why am I so weak here?" and start asking, "What conditions are shaping this decision?" That question returns power immediately, because power is not only the right answer, power is the right process. A clear mind, a chosen pace, a visible ask, and a real option to refuse. Protect those, and a lot of dark persuasion never gets traction. Lose those, And even charm can become a leash. So the next time something feels strangely urgent, strangely flattering, or strangely hard to pin down, trust the friction. Pause before you please. Clarify before you commit. And if the pressure rises the moment you slow down, you just learned exactly what was trying to control you. If this gave a name to something you've lived through, subscribe for more calm, sharp breakdowns of hidden influence. We keep these lessons practical so you can spot the pattern early and protect your peace without losing yourself. And if you want the next layer, watch the next video, because some tactics only reveal themselves after trust is already built. Stay aware, stay steady, and stay difficult to steer.